we overcorrected to a point of insanity, in my opinion, and that's why there's like sort of this rejection, especially from the younger generations. For example, red dye 40 maxing is something that Gen Alpha is doing a lot, and it's so funny. They'll be like, "Oh, like my pre-workout is it's like one of those like red Swedish fish things."
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Snaxshot, the curatorial and slightly mercurial grocery newsletter and community, has grown into an industry force, read by CPG executives and members of food media on a near-religious level. I am one of those people. Andrea Hernandez returns to the show to go over the big headlines from the year at the grocery store and in the CPG trenches. We cover so many buzzy brands and establish warhorses alike and tap into some generational divides when it comes to the quick-moving world of grocery. If you have any interest in the future of packaged foods, as well as restaurant chains, this is the episode for you. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Andrea Hernandez, welcome to This Is Taste. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? It's been a while.
It's been a little while, and honestly, I love having you in the studio when you're here. We're doing this remotely, but listen, I got to read through a bunch of your work last night on Snaxshot. What a year, Andrea. You have really, really, really covered the industry of CPG, culinary trends, grocery. Wow, what with such care and such voice and such deep reporting. I want to stress that. I think many know you from your tonal gymnastics, your great memes, your exciting writing style. But as a journalist, I consider you absolutely a peer. You're a journalist and you're covering this industry with great rigor. Congratulations on the amazing year.
Thank you. Oh my God. It's gonna make me tear up. I can't believe it turned 4 this year. Time flies, honestly.
It really does. Well, let's jump into it. We have a pretty big agenda, and I really wanted to have you at the end of the year and talking about so many topics, everything from CPG trends, some booms and busts. GLP-1 will come up. We have some chats about fast food, and of course the grocery store. But let me just ask you, when you write about historical brands like Quaker Oats and new products like AO being quote unquote yassified, what are you saying?
Okay, so I am obviously an extremely online person, and yassifying is like a meme that came up like a few years ago, and it was all about like when you would take someone's picture and then like auto tune it to like an extreme to like have it be a glow up. And so I basically like adapted that term to be like, this is like what I mean with yassification. So for example, the fact that mayo used to be such a kind of plain condiment, and over like the last like few years, obviously millennial led movement here on, we have like spicy mayo, or like making spicy mayo, or like aioli, like kind of giving it a glow up. I think AO is a fully millennial brand, obviously, like, but that's kind of like the idea of like, oh, you yassified this. Like Manischewitz is a very good example,
Yeah.
right? Like they literally went through this rebrand that actually caused a lot of controversy because I feel like nothing is safe from millennial yassification.
What about Quaker Oats? I loved your post writing about, the guy, the Quaker
Oh,
is
yeah.
getting a little bit of a glow up.
I know. Like, another one that had one a few years ago, it was Paul Newman from the Paul Newman, like, and I was like, wait, did they like literally yassify him too? I feel like everybody's undergoing facelifts when it comes to like brand, like legacy branding. Everybody's getting a little bit of a nip and tuck here and there.
Yeah, I saw the septum ring in Paul Newman's. No, I'm just kidding. But it comes down to the aesthetics of the packaging and the way that some of these historical brands are
they're
bringing in new color palettes,
right? So like the Manischewitz one is so funny because like it even had like these little quirky characters, and it's like, oh, they're holding the matzo ball. At times I feel like it's ridiculous, right? Like who's even building a legacy brand? And so it's so funny like to think of like I'll tell my grandchildren like, "Oh, this was the brand of my era." And it's like the adorable cute little characters, but we'll see how that translates over the years.
Have any of these yassified brands changed formula, or has the end result actually
No,
benefited?
I feel like you know that's not. I feel like it's all about like, oh, I'm still doing all these like shitty ingredients, but you have a better. I like they're adapting to fit with all the new brands that come out, right? And so like obviously there's like a blend that's happened, and so you don't want to stand out and be outdated. But I don't think that unless we'll see what Maha Make America Great Again does in terms of that. But for now, I don't. There's not
Yeah,
been a lot of formula
Maha,
adaptation.
make America healthy again. Like
Oh,
that's been the meme recently.
I
Uh,
know.
we'll get into Chad food and the tilt to the right later in this conversation, but I want to ask you about GLP-1s. We on the show have spoken about GLP-1 friendly recipes, QSR menu items, and products in stores that are really geared towards GLP-1 users. What's your take on this big shift we saw in 2024? And, how far is this trend going to go?
Oh, I don't think it's gone far enough. I think there's definitely room, and there are already um like signals of that for me. And it's funny because like last year, everybody was like panicking. It's like big food's about to get crushed and blah blah blah. I'm like, no. And I felt like I was like the odd duck saying like, calm down, like nothing's gonna happen. Like big food has survived like Atkins and the demonization of sugar and carbs and the whole gluten-free movement, and somehow they've managed to adapt, right? Like whether it's just adding vegan to their labels, even though it's always been like a plant-based thing. They did that with Oreos. But I feel like with the GLP-1 stuff, you started seeing at the beginning of the year, obviously a lot of brands have taken the opportunity. I think Daily Harvest came out with this like positioning of our like frozen meals that are geared for that. Nestle also recently launched a line that's more protein focused. That's something that apparently when you're on GLP-1 is like you don't get hungry, and so like your body is not getting like enough of protein and fiber specifically. You also have brands like have gone complete like 360 of their positioning. Super gut is something that comes to mind. So when the gut health trend was like in full force and everything was gut health and millennial metamucil and poppy and olipop, super gut was all the rave and powder and as a supplement. And now they're calling themselves Nature's Ozempic. And I'm just like waiting for the lawsuits. I'm like, there's
Yeah.
so many lawsuits in the making. But the snackification of GLP-1 is something that you're seeing when it comes to brands that are saying like, "Oh, I can these drinks can help regulate your blood sugar in the same way that GLP-1s, semaglutide do." No, it's true. Like those things are already out there. There's a brand that's called Good Idea that does that. There's another brand called Joy Days. That's a cookie brand. That's really interesting because Walmart has been testing sort of a diabetic snacks section, and so they kind of were uh, testing that with brands like Joy Days, and then also GNC has also a GLP-1 like supplement like dedicated aisle for it, right? So I think that it's coming, the full Zempic era. I think that's what we're in right now.
Yeah.
So everything that either is konjac jelly is an ingredient that has risen because of that. So like there's a brand called Skinny Pasta, which I can't believe that they're still using skinny in the branding, but in 2024. But they use konjac jelly, and like one of their positionings is that, right? It doesn't spike your blood sugar. That 2 years ago I wrote about how the rise of the portable and non-invasive like um, blood sugar, the what's it called, the glucose monitors would lead to people being more like that's like the hot biometric right now. It's like what's spiking like my blood sugar and how that leads to like overall like metabolic health. So I do think that we're starting to see a lot more of that manifest, and obviously it's at the hand of the GLP-1 semaglutide craze.
Do you feel like the GLP-1 will hit the menu at some of our most popular
Yeah.
QSRs like Chipotle, McDonald's, Burger King? I mean,
Um, for
how do you see that happening?
Well, I think it's already been happening. So like, protein hacks like are very popular for and Chipotle,
Hmm.
is very well known for that. And I think they even tried to uh like take advantage of that. I know they did a partnership with Strava, which I thought was really like funny to see because there's a lot of like fit people that do the macro hacks and protein stuff with like just regular chain food, like even the protein carnivore obsessed people will tell you like, oh, if you go to McDonald's, here's what you should order to get this amount of protein. And so I do think, Jamba Juice came out with a GLP-1 friendly line
Yeah.
of, I don't know if it was Jamba Juice or it was Smoothie King,
No,
sorry, it was
Smoothie King, the New
yeah.
Orleans company. Yep, Smoothie
Yeah,
King.
and
Yeah.
I think it's really funny 'cause, um, I think blood sugar regulation, the whole idea of, like, what's my metabolic health, and the ability to be able to see how things influence you. I think that, and I wrote that in my deep dive on, like, the impact of wearables. I called it wearable Wonka, and it was about, like, how these new abilities to see, like, how sugar affects you, how beer and, like, a cup of wine can affect your sleep, etcetera. Like, that has it's dictating, right? It's, like, helping dictate F&B trends, which is
Oh, of
really
course. And
fascinating.
I think we're in a data obsessed world and the wearables are becoming cheaper and cheaper. And, I think we
Mhm.
really like seeing metrics lead to better eating decisions with big air quotes. Andrea, I want to move on to, I'm calling this section, What the Fuck Happened? And I have a couple questions. And let's do this rapid fire because I have much more to go to. But first up,
Okay.
what the fuck happened with Foxtrot this year?
Ugh. Retail is very hard. And I think we're finally past the era of thinking that you can hack things that have proven to be very it's really hard. It's like level 5 hard to figure it out. And so that you can't just like funnel a lot of venture money and like subsidize that growth. It has to be like something that either works and you're in the business aspect of it works and the economics of like the unit economics of these stores work, and if not, then it's something that either it shouldn't be scaled so quickly, which is I think what Foxtrot did, um and not like not relying on that, like, oh, that cash injection that's like I feel like this year in itself has been sort of like an apocalypse style like happening for a lot of this like CPG world in general, because they realize like, oh, the VC money wells dried up.
I
And
mean, it was
so
directly related to the beginning of the year, at least, with the high interest rates, it was a real credit crunch and money was more expensive. And that was just more of like on the national scale, like there just wasn't money
yeah, but
available. And
even like lenders like Ampla, that
yeah,
they were also like the easy money that a lot of these like CPG companies came to be. And like I feel like Foxtrot was like a whole mess with that whole Odd Fox hospitality. They had someone that was like a QSR person in charge, and I'm like, shouldn't you have someone who's like
grocery,
worked
maybe.
in groceries?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so anyway, so I think I think for me the TLDR is like you can't hack things with VC money, and retail is one of those things.
But it seems Foxtrot has kind of emerged from the ashes and is now
Yeah.
reopened a few locations. What's your read on their 2025 briefly? You're
I mean,
laughing.
just go to
You're
the
very much
Instagram,
laughing.
just Instagram comments say it all, right? Like I feel like we are past like we know better than to like leave a lot of employees, out of money. And I knew specifically a lot of like like Foxtrot employees like on the exec level. I think that there was a lot of bad blood that eventually, like, because of the way that it was managed, and the lack of accountability and the way that it was like, suspicious, like, to see this being like brought back to life by like this same group that invested in them. It felt a little sus. And I don't know, maybe I don't know. I don't know why they're opening all these stores again. I'm like, I thought you guys were want to try to stay local. But
Yeah, and
again,
stay maybe start a little bit slower and not go crazy. But yeah, it is quite sus. But listen, I'm pulling for Foxtrot. I think for me, more retail is better retail for CPG founders, and
no, 100%. I'm not trying to say like, oh, take him down. I'm just saying like
of course not.
sometimes you also have to at one point take accountability and just be transparent. And I think leading with transparency is
Yeah.
what's important.
Next up on my what the fuck happened, and I could have picked many. I was gonna maybe talk about that bagel in a bag thing, but I'm just skipping
Ugh.
that. We're not going there. But what the fuck happened with the sudden closure of Boisson?
Yeah, it's so funny and timely because I think the CEO, like the ex founder, like just announced like a thing called Buzz Boisson that's going to be like just a marketplace focused on like things with like functional ingredients. I think it's going to be focused on like CBD and THC
And so
stuff.
not the non-elk. So to be
Yeah,
clear, Boisson
non-alc
was a
stuff.
non-elk
Yeah.
retail and online channel, and it had
They
several
went bust
stores.
because the NA permeated the mainstream. And so like there was no need for them when Target and Walmart are now doing the NA curation. Liquor stores are actually making space for NA. And I think that like we cannot like the future of NA, and something that I actually had this whole panel earlier this year with people like from Diageo and Pernod and other investors in the space. And we talked about how the future of NA has always and will be always around alcohol. And I think this like idea of like scaling this whole NA thing and that there was going to be enough demand. Again, retail is not easy to scale. And I think they grew too much because, some of the smaller stores have been able to like just, you know, work it out because they're focused on one little store
Yeah.
as opposed to like having to scale. I don't know. I think that they had 10 stores at one point, or around that. But I think what killed it is that NA went mainstream, which is good, right? It's good for the industry. The fact that now you can find Gia and Target and Whole Foods, I think that's amazing. It's more options for people who want to, skip a wine of glass over the holidays and do a Gia instead.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's a good indication that NA wasn't just like a little
Yeah.
a blip.
Let me follow up. You said something really interesting. I want to dig into it. When you said the future of NA is with alcohol, do you mean the big Pernots and the Diageos? Are you saying they're going to be the leaders in innovation and product, offering
I don't know if they'll
products?
be the leaders, but they are investing heavily in
Yeah.
the space, right? Like Pernod, I know, has invested in Gia, for example.
Yeah.
And what's it called? The parent company of Aperol. I forget. I don't know if it's called Aperol, but they
It's
are also
Campari, right? Isn't it
Campari,
Campari?
Campari.
Yeah,
Yeah.
America
So
or
they
whatever.
are actually bringing a brand that was the OG NA aperitif, which is I think it's called Crodino, and like they're bringing it to the US, which is something that hasn't happened on their end. It was always through like third party distributors. And I think that's like a good indication that, they are also realizing like there's all these untapped potential of bringing this like little NA aperitif into, the US market that has already been educated enough, thanks to Gia and Melanie and the incredible job that she's
Yeah,
been
and
doing.
St. Agrestis too. You give them credit as well. The Brooklyn
Oh
company doing the
yeah,
Tony
St.
Negroni.
Agrestis, 100%. Oh my God, yes, 100%. St. Agrestis. There's a lot that have been building sort of that bitters and acceptance of NA. Like, St. Agrestis and Gia are all also on menus, right? On a food service restaurant level. So I do think that they have been investing a lot more. Even LVMH just invested in an NA champagne, which I found very interesting.
Yeah,
But
it's cool to see, and we haven't even touched on NA beers, and we've covered it extensively on our
oh
show. And
yeah.
and the the
Athletic
variety.
Brewing, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Athletic was the great gateway, and they're gonna always be
Mhm.
credited to be with the first mover. And now I've been to like nice restaurants or well established bar programs, and now they're like, we can't sell Athletic anymore. Athletic is too basic. Athletic is not. We want to do like all day, or we want to or best day, and we want to do like a local NA. And I love seeing that. Athletic will always be there, but the smaller brands emerging on these
But
menus.
even the premium side of it, like Barrel, right? Where it's like a premium NA beer,
Oh
which is
yeah.
also interesting. Like, oh, so, but we'll see, right? Because like NA at times, I'm like, I don't know how much more of that spending is there for. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see
Oh,
this like whole premiumization of NA and see if it lasts because that's something that's one of the biggest things you see complaints of people saying like, why am I paying if it doesn't have any booze like on
see,
restaurants?
that's a very good point, Andrea. I firmly believe that people are going to pay for quality and premium even without alcohol. They're going to see it as its own category. And when everyone at your table is ordering Negroni or a Vesper and you're offered a $11 premium NA, you're going to be like, yeah, of course I'm getting that. I mean, the mocktail is pretty torched, I think, and
Yeah, I
as a
think the
category.
mocktails forge. I think the premiumization of NA has something to stand on if they can like continue to be able to like they took what alcohol knows how to do so well, which is make things look sexy, right?
Yep.
And I think the biggest opportunity here was because of the NA spectrum. It used to be like the plain seltzer as your options, or like the overly sugary drinks, like a virgin daiquiri or a virgin margarita or like a Coca-Cola or whatever. So like there wasn't a lot of like adult feeling options. So I do think that there's still a lot of opportunity there for sure.
My last what the fuck happened? What the fuck happened with Siete and this massive exit that happened and had the world kind of chattering?
People, I think it's people don't really understand how like the options these CPG companies have when it comes to like exiting at a scale that they are in, or like even continuing at the scale that they're in, right? Because and if you want to like learn more, Jesse Newman from the Wall Street Journal, she just put out like a week ago a whole like look into like what are these like hidden fees that make groceries so expensive, and it talks about like distributors like KeHE, UNFI, and the fees from groceries themselves that actually are the ones that inflate a lot of these like specifically emerging brand like prices. But so I think people are more than anything, they're just like scared that Siete being a very no seed oil, healthy option for tortilla chips and all these like classic Latin American staples, condiments, etc. I think that that's the biggest fear of people. Is like, oh, it's going to be tarnished by Pepsi. I see it as an opportunity for Pepsi to be able to start focusing on healthy snacks, right? So like how do you like Siete did all the this legwork, for them. So like I think it would be dumb for them to they kind of I think it was like a three times multiplier. So it's like 1.2 billion. So I don't think they're gonna like ruin a brand that they paid a premium for, and I don't think they're gonna try to like destroy that brand equity.
Oh, I mean, Andrea, they bought the C-suite, they bought the founders, and they bought these people who really knew how to innovate in this space, have real authentic stories, and they of course see this Latin American market really having
Huge in the
a
US.
huge interest in eating better and having no seed oils in a variety of products that are really foundational in those folks eating.
Yeah. So I think it was it just people not understanding how like these brands come into grocery stores, how grocery stores operate, what goes behind the scenes, obviously because it's not something that they teach you in school, or that it's not necessarily common sense. So I understand why people would feel outraged, but I'm telling people like let's give it an opportunity before calling people like sellouts or
Oh,
telling people like I'm not going to buy any more products, etc. Because I do think that there's an incredible team behind it, and just the fact that they have been able to survive for a decade, just knowing how emerging brands and how difficult, no matter how much venture money you raise, right? Like it's really difficult to be able to say, oh, I had like it's those exits exist in food and beverage, but they're very far and few in
yeah.
between, and it really takes a lot of grit to get there.
Well, it's a great segue. You mentioned grocery store, and Andrea, you wrote an incredible essay that I'm going to link to in the show notes. It's personal, but then it really dives into a topic we've covered here extensively, and it's really why the grocery store is broken. But you start out talking about your own personal experience of shopping for food growing up in Honduras, and then you segue into a point by point. I would say like denouncement of the current paradigm of grocery both in real life and online. So tell me a little bit about growing up. What was grocery shopping like, and how did this, get you thinking about these really deeply rooted problems in the grocery store?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like we obviously had just like a traditional grocery store, but I like my fondest memories are like actually going to like the local markets, and like seeing it's like a very like it's dirty experience, but it's like feels primal. Like you're there and like people are like, wrapping the produce in like newspapers and they're weighing stuff and like it's like it's they literally just pulled stuff off the ground and you can see like there's still dirt there and like it's I don't know, I feel like it's something that I was very blessed like now looking back, like it was such a blessing to be able to grow up so close to food in that way. Like I like remember like talking about this with a few friends where like they didn't really know this whole you got to pinch the butt of the avocado to see if it's ripe.
Right, of course. Such a good
Don't
move.
they don't know that or like how to tell if a watermelon is ripe or not. And I think that it's a big disconnect, especially I think our generation. And I think it's like a juxtaposition of like, oh, this is something that's so inherent of the human experience, but the fact that in the US, like one of the richest countries in the world, that access to fresh food in that way, like that it's not easily accessible to people. But in my country, that's actually one of the poorest in the world. It's very easy to be able to access like from your local like producer. And so I think it was very interesting when I got tasked to write this essay for this like magazine, um, that asked me like, what do you think is the role of design and packaging and in the modern grocery? And I think for me, it was good to be able to take a step back and be like, in history, right? It used to be that the grocery store was there to fulfill a need, and now the way that it's structured and the modern grocer and obviously like in mass consumption, the way that grocery stores operate is very intentionally wanting you to consume and buy as many things as possible. So it's like the how do you make the cart bigger? And so for example, this has been standard for a while now, like the fact that they put all the milk and dairy and the eggs essentials, they go all the way in the back. And the reason they do that is because they want you to be browsing through the aisles when to get your essentials and in hopes that when you're browsing that you're going to be, adding more stuff to your cart. So a lot of people don't even know that the grocery stores have been intentionally designed, and a lot of the stuff that you end up with at the grocery store, like it's already been
Yeah,
like
ordained. Yeah.
chose, yeah, preordained for you. And so I think it's important to note those things because now the way that you have these gargantuan like grocery store chains, like this whole Kroger and Albertsons, the consolidation of the space is only lending that the grocery store has become a real estate play. And it's the bigger pockets have the best real estate. So obviously that's why you're going to see the big food companies continuously be all over your local grocery store chain, etc. And so I think that that's also something that should be talked about. I see a lot of people complaining there's not a lot of innovation in CBD that actually makes it to mainstream grocery stores, and that's one of the reasons, right? It's like because I like to call it a very anti-competitive structure. And so it's something that doesn't get addressed a lot, and I think if I can if I can use, if I can make this in a way that you can, if I can express this in a way that you can understand and that you can relate to, like there and like by sharing my story and how different it is now that I live in the U.S. I don't know. I really am trying to figure out how to get more people to understand that the illusion of choice is real, and there's
Yeah,
actually a lot of stuff
there's
not.
a lot of stuff, and on that note, and I think you drill into this very nicely in the essay. As these stores get bigger and bigger and the footprints widen, it's not just about selling the groceries to the consumers, but it's about charging back to the people actually producing the food. So as you increase the number of SKUs available in your grocery store from 10,000 to 12,000 to 28,000 to larger, each one of those SKUs, as you write, has a fee associated with a slotting fee. You're paying the grocery store to be on the shelf. And so there's real revenue advantage or real revenue goals for a grocery store to get bigger and bigger, which of course hurts the consumer. Too much choice and too much janky ass products on the shelf. They have a long shadow over some of these smaller brands that either are paying a lesser fee for lesser slotting or can't even get into the grocery store. And this doesn't just happen in real life. This is in your Instacart apps where certain products are elevating while you're browsing. And really, this to me has been the foundational problem with grocery. I've talked about it many times with many founders that, they're just gaming the system by offering too many products. It's not to help you shop better and faster, but to
Oh
actually make
yeah,
money.
it's not about, trust me, these grocery stores don't really think about the consumer. And there are some that say like Whole Foods, like, oh, we curate like and we make sure we don't carry these types of ingredients,
Cloud
blah
cover,
blah blah.
cloud
And
cover.
yeah, but so like even the fact that Kroger and Albertson can actually like merge. The fact that even though there was some pushback against it, the fact that Mars, that big, confectionery company is buying the Kellogg's snack division, which is huge. And the fact that we're allowing for there to be more power that gets consolidated. I think it's a little bit vibe sessions, like a vibe session doomerism, but I do think that there are things that exist that have been like that are currently out there, right? So like I don't remember who designed. It was like some studio that did these stickers that like they all change color to tell you like, oh, this product is approaching its like ripeness
Yeah, like a fruit,
to,
for
yeah,
example. Yeah.
fruit. And then there's one that was designed for meat too, so that it helps like visually convey to you like this is about to expire, and to like as a way to help people not waste so much food. Like those things exist. The sad thing is that those things usually don't make it to like to reality, because there's that like people don't want you to like know that, because for them it's like, oh, you wasted that, you're going to go buy a new one. And I think this is, again, I think that there's a lot of systems that are corrupted, which is really sad. And I think that there's so many people trying to do better. Like regrocery is a good example of like taking away the packaging and taking away like all the temptations of all these other things. It's like, bring your own container. You need nuts, here's nuts. There's no brands, there's just nuts, or from whatever producer, or bananas for. And I think that that's something that unfortunately that also hasn't broken into the mainstream. But it's nice to know that there are people thinking about this, and bringing back that that original concept of what a grocery store
Yeah, to
was,
help
which
the
was
consumer out.
fulfill a need. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think on the antitrust tip, Lena Khan, who is Biden's antitrust czar, really ran some very effective campaigns and really tried to block these deals. And with the change of administration and Trump administration ushering in a new set of chess on the chessboard, I feel that these antitrust, these crusaders are not going to be in the administration, so there'll be much more consolidation. So I'm less hopeful that that these big companies are going to get bigger. Now, let me ask you. I'm going to ask you the tough question because, of course, we can comment on the state of grocery, but I'm just going to pose a hypothetical to you. Andrea, you're named the CEO of Kroger. It's the country's largest grocery chain. There's 5,000 of them in our country. What do you do over the first 90 days of your CEO job to fix this?
I would probably be killed. But
Assassins will
I
be
would
out.
yeah, I would push for it to be broken, like broken up, because I think we should go back to the grocery chains being local and supporting that local ecosystem as opposed to like, oh, we're now like five, like then the whole that's why then they need to like make more and more money because it's like, oh, you're now a 5,000 retailer versus like, maybe a 300 chain. Um, and a good example of this is like HEB. Like they're very regional. Like I think they're only in Texas and some parts of Mexico. And I'm like, they do really well. I think they do 40 billion a year. And it's like, isn't that enough? I feel like that should be enough, And so my first 90 days, I would fight as hell to try to figure out how to break up the big grocer conglomerate,
And
which I
then
would probably be killed for.
your shareholders would, or your board of directors would certainly boot you after those first 90
Oh
days. But
yeah.
but I like the impetus there, and I feel like HEB is a good example. And of course, just to be clear, HEB has plenty of the same tactics as Kroger. They're charging slotting fees and they're large footprints, but keeping it more regional and local probably has a real benefit. So I like that instinct a lot. Um, I want to segue and ask you about soy boys, trad wives, and the elevation of quote unquote Chad foods. These are topics you cover in a wonderful essay called Pendulum Swung Back Hard. I'm linking to it in the show notes. So, what did you learn when reporting this piece about this conservatism of food?
Yeah. So it's funny because like a few, like I don't know if maybe it was last year where I like remember tweeting out like, oh, anti-seed oil has become like a political signaler, and this was before like RFK was like getting in all into it and stuff, and like the all Maha stuff. But I think this shift in food and beverage basically predicted the election, and if you were paying attention to what was happening in food and beverage, like it should have not come to you as a surprise that Trump won. And the idea of, going back to eating real meat, eating real dairy, eating like raw milk. That it's something that I drew attention to last year too, where it's like, hey, have you seen that there's this whole like politicization of dairy and meat? So the reversal of the alts, for example, like that were so popular in 2010s, like you saw states were actively like calling for a ban of cultured alternative proteins, and then you had the reversal of states actually deregulating and legalizing raw milk sales direct to consumer, which was something that wasn't like it was there for I don't know how many decades, but that reversal of legalization was very interesting too, right? And so you have this whole like movement that's great. It's great. We should go back to, eating like real food. I agree with that, but the interesting part is it being co-opted by conservative political parties, um, specifically like the Republican Party, and use like how this whole like idea of what is a trad wife, what is a Chad, what is a soy boy, like that meme that came out like late in 2010s. Like that was kind of like the cannon in the coal mine of the tides are turning. And so for those who don't know, the soy boy is a meme based on the idea that drinking soy milk, oat milk, etc., like is like it's emasculating based on some ingredients that are found in these types of products. So then like the idea of like a Chad food would be something that has like a lot of protein, and even Gen Alpha, has kind of been brought into this whole conversation. Like they have the meme like Giga Chad, and they have this whole thing about mewing and perfecting your body. Um, Teenage girls like on the Gen Alpha Gen Z side that call themselves crunchy teens, and they have the same beliefs of which is really fascinating, the same belief of like, oh, anti-seed oils, and like not putting like they all do grass-fed like butter, not putting any alternatives in like alternative food into their body. And also like their role models are people like Nara Smith, right? That's like one of the OG trad wife personas. And even seeing baby Hubermans like start their own journeys, like this teenager I mentioned in the essay, that he has his own podcast. He's an anti-vaxxer. He's posting about all the books that he's reading and similar, like, oh, get some sunlight. Very Brian Johnson, like on like deep sleep stuff. And it's like, you're like like 17 or something. Like, what are you even talking about? So it's really interesting because what I basically came to a conclusion is that if we're hoping that Gen Alpha is going to be any different, it doesn't seem that they're shifting any differently than what you have seen with Gen Z's sort of the way that a lot of Gen Z people also kind of skew Republican. So I think it's very fascinating to see that has been like trickling down, and that's why I literally titled it "The Pendulum Swung Back Hard." I think the fact that we are seeing oat milk as woke,
Yeah.
that it's considered woke, and that people like that it's like, oh my god, if I'm eating an oat milk, how is that literally a political signaler? Like, am I saying that I'm voting for a certain party based on my food decisions? And I think that's that's insane to think about.
It's
That
insane,
even
but it's relevant to how, right now the grocery store is the greatest signifier of your values. I mean, we've been talking
Mhm.
about that
It's an
you and I.
identifier, yeah.
It's an identifier, and it really it is clear that the foods that you choose to eat says more than you're staying healthy or you're indulging. Could go on both sides of the coin. It's your political beliefs, it's your religious beliefs. It's how powerful this industry you cover has. The power of our of food in our culture is so profound.
Yeah, exactly. And the the fact that it has to be politicized. Food has always been political, but it's crazy that there's division in the idea of we should be eating healthy. We should be eating from like local meat and dairy producers. Like the idea that that has to cause division to me is just very very upsetting, that it's like drawing lines and like lines in the sand. And I think that's something that should be just like up to you, and not necessarily have to put you in a division because you're like eating beef tallow chips now. Like people are going to think you're like a trumper and that's going to like
I
upset
know,
people. Like
I know.
it's really fascinating, but hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, I mean, at this point, I don't even know if
Ugh.
there's a hopefully, but I think it's important for us to realize that if we could have seen that this shift was happening in something that's so basic, right, which is your food and like beverage options, then it should have been something that we understood, that was like where there was there was only one person that was going to come out victorious from this,
Yep.
and it was obviously Trump.
Andrea, you've done some really deep reporting on soda culture in America. You wrote about care of Dr. Pepper overtaking Pepsi as the number two soda brand. And you also wrote really colorfully about the virality of the 7-Up Shirley, which I fucking love. You also wrote about the probiotic soda wars, which we've covered on our show quite a bit. It seems that all gens are still drinking a lot of soda. So what does this tell you about soda in 2025?
Yeah, I think again, the pendulum swung back. I think we're seeing, and this is something that I predicted literally 2022. I did a couple of interviews for the LA Times and Bon Appetit. They're like, what's your biggest like thing that you're seeing. I'm like, oh, the pendulum's about to swing. And I like that was like what almost 3 years ago now, since we're like at the end of 2024. But I think that to me it was like it's when we overcorrected, right? The fact that we do have probiotic sodas and like Palo Santo water, which is, I'm not even kidding, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Just like Google it. I think we overcorrected to a point of insanity, in my opinion, and that's why there's like sort of this rejection, especially from the younger generations. For example, red dye 40 maxing is something
I
that
know.
Gen Alpha is doing a
So
lot, and
nuts.
it's so funny. They'll be like, oh, like my pre-workout is it's like a one of those like red Swedish fish things, and it's funny because it's counterculture, right? That is also to be expected that things operate in cycles. But yeah, like to meet Dr. Keurig, like Keurig Dr. Pepper is their official name. They literally, I think to me, they what a comeback. Like the fact that they were able to dethrone Pepsi, who for decades has been always number two to Coca-Cola, through like strategic like all these product launches that they've done, like the Shirley Temple one, being very savvy enough to understand that's one of the most popular Gen Alpha drinks. Like parents were so excited about it. Like 180,000 people like that post that I tweet, like when I tweeted about it. And it really showed me like, wow, like this is a commotion for a soda that's not an Olipop or a Poppy. And that, it just reminds you like sometimes these things that we try to like kind of push these narratives, which is fine. Olipop's doing allegedly 500 million in rev this year. I think Poppy's saying the same thing. And yeah, there's potential of it becoming more of a modern soda kind of play. Walmart actually now has a modern soda section, and those are the brands included, along with things like Zevia. Yeah, Big Soda, Big Soda's bag. You look at the Utah culture of those like soda shops, right? Where it's like the swigs is one
The
of the
dirty
big ones.
soda
The
culture.
dirty soda
Absolutely.
culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like Pepsi's has been testing one called Drips. Like no matter how much we demonize sugar, like people cannot get enough of it.
Do you think one of the two probiotics is going to be acquired in 2025? Do you feel like this soda war might end, or there'll be a called truce of some sort?
They need it. I
They
don't
do.
think they're not going to IPO. I don't know. I mean, what other options they have? I know, like I have heard that there's one doing better than the other one, and I think one of them is burning more money just to put all this narrative of it being like such a big thing around it. But I won't say
Well,
names.
I'll
But
just say we'll call back to an episode when I was driving to LAX and I saw a literal 14-story billboard for Olipop's new Mountain Dew. So I'll leave that for the listener to take their own opinion.
yeah. No, but I will also say like it's fascinating to see Poppy get into Canada, for example, and how that the branding there, the positioning is much more different because they're not allowed to say all these like claims because obviously Canada regulates a lot stricter. And so if you look at Poppy Canada, like the Canadian website for Poppy, the cans don't have gut health. They have nothing. They say nothing about prebiotics. It's just called a modern soda. And I think that's going to be the play for them soon in the US. I think this Walmart doing a modern soda section solidifies that theory for me that we're going to soon see Poppy and Olipop start to abandon the gut health positioning. You heard it here first.
I mean, we're all macro conscious, and if you flip the can, you're going to see the fiber concentration, and this is millennial metamucil, which you've coined brilliantly in your writing. So, I want to segue. You profiled the founders of Chain, and that's all uppercase, and wrote this beautiful profile of the founders. And you also had this great intro of this piece, and it talks about our continued love of fast food and, the passion for innovation in the fast food space. I guess this is a two-part question. First, what is Chain? I'm so confused. Is this just like a food festival?
Okay, Chain to me is Comic Con for restaurants.
Ah,
That's like the easiest, like, but also it's like an ode to American chains, which they've told me they believe are the last monoculture in America left, which, kind of feels right. And so I think, what they started off, they have their own space in LA where they do like events. So like they just did this like Moana collaboration with Disney. They're known for, so if you go to their headquarters, or if you like look at the essay I wrote, we actually did have like all these like photos that we took of their place. It's all like it's like a museum for chain restaurants. So like you'll have the iconic Pizza Hut lamps. You have all these like little that you recall from like the 80s, 90s McDonald's playgrounds. I think that it is an ode to in their own way of honoring like the impact of these chains in American culture, and they do so by doing like like these their own versions with a chef. It's Chef Tim Hollinsworth,
Yep.
and he does like these elevated versions of like what you remember, like Taco Bell. Like these menus, they even like revived some of the stuff that hadn't been on the menu for Taco Bell. I think it was this year, but they've done also like cool like merch drops that have sold out. I don't know. It sounds like they're just having fun doing this, and the business side of it has kind of evolved to also doing like collaborations, and then their Chain Fest, which has become literally a Comic Con
Hmm.
for um like restaurant rats, which also feels super American to me. Like that there's a festival celebrating fast food. It's like a classic American.
I'm really curious about this company, and BJ Novak, come on the show. I know you want to. We've been chatting about it online, so come on the show to talk about it. But
Yes.
also, and Tim Hollinsworth, of ODM in LA, and a really acclaimed fine dining chef, and they've got the manpower behind it, and these events sell out quickly, and they all seem extremely fun. So my question was really like, I'm curious on the and really optimistic about this, and thanks for clarifying it in this great piece you wrote. And my second part to the question is, what have you learned from McDonald's both very good year? The app
Mhm.
has been on fire, and there's been these incredible collabs, but also quite a bad year. I mean, the stock price has been battered, and Q4 saw this pretty bad quarter pounder with cheese, listeria outbreak, which certainly is not what you want to see as a McDonald's executive. What's your read on our legend, our golden arches?
So I like think that they've done a really great job in the past 5 years nailing the like becoming also like the kind of what's it called, like the blueprint for how to actually be cultural, understand culture and doing collaborations that don't feel cringe.
Yeah.
I think for a while there was a lot of like just mismatches that were happening. And then they started doing these like cool drops with Cactus Plant, um, the like flea market. They just did this like McDoodles collaboration with the Doodles NFT group. But
I mean, the Grimace
uh
birthday party, the Grimace shake back from the end
oh,
of
the
last
Grimace
year.
Shake. Yeah, they've done a lot of stuff that feels like it's like a lot more in tune with the culture and it's not coming off as cringe. They also did this very obscure like like fashion show thing with this. I don't know, it's like I don't know, it's a European brand called Vane. But it was so fascinating. I'm like, whoa, how do they like it was cool. It's like they reimagined McDonald's uniforms like by repurposing like old McDonald's uniforms, and then I don't know, they made these like really insane like jackets, and it's crazy. So it's like imagine if a goth McDonald's existed, like
Oh
that's
man.
kind of the vibe. But I would definitely like Google it. And so I think they've been doing that really well. I think on a branding side, that has elevated them for sure. And I think everybody's strapped. Like this year, everybody was doing a value menu. There was like a lot of the tightening of the belts around summer for sure. And I think that it's so funny. Like Chili's has like this like like fight with McDonald's online is hilarious because like the prices of fast food has kind of obviously gone up that but also like at par with these fast casual chains.
Yeah.
So like Chili's will be like, oh, for $10, this is all the stuff that you can get, which I don't know how scalable it is. So Chili's needs to like remember like those are the kinds of plays that made Red Lobster go bankrupt. But there's this
Exactly.
whole
Exactly.
idea of like, oh, McDonald's has become expensive, etc. And I think that's something that it's not just a McDonald's struggle. I think that's a struggle that like all these QSR restaurants are having to deal with, and they've brought back the $5 value menu and the fact that it's a $5 value.
Yeah,
It's like,
and
well,
leveraging this really terrific app, and the kiosk experience too. If
the
you dine
app,
in
yeah,
at
but
McDonald's, is very, very sharp. It's very well done.
yeah, I feel like the apps, them are probably at par in some ways with the success of Starbucks. And it's so funny because then they actually start operating in the way of a bank, right? Where it's like, oh, these gift cards and all these things. It's really funny how like that it essentially makes McDonald's like some sort of a bank, which is funny to think about. But I do think that McDonald's has, at least on the perception of it, has definitely changed. And who knows, right? With the whole Maha situation, who knows if RFK can actually bring beef tallow back, the
To the
beef tallow
value
price
menu, yeah, we'll see like a 99-cent beef tallow add-on to all McDonald's. This your comment a second ago leads to my final question, Andrea. Thank you so much for this great conversation. I can't wait to have you back. Andrea, is Starbucks fucked?
That is a really good question. And because looking, don't like, I feel like don't tease like sleeping giants. Like I
Yes.
think Starbucks encroached on when they started like saying like, oh, we're gonna build, this. I think it was like every 9 minutes they were gonna open a store in China, because now China is becoming like this huge coffee market, something that is a big change from them. Obviously, a big tea drinkers before, but they were having this CEO that was more of like a CPG background. The all like a lot of these changes that happened where they like shot themselves in the foot in 20, I think it was like around 2020, that they said, they came out publicly saying like, we're no longer a third space and we're going to focus on convenience and pick up whatever. And like they're surprised that people are like not like fucking enjoying Starbucks. Like who wants to go and like be in line like for like a pickup line, and like that's not a coffee experience. And like I always joke, like coffee, nobody goes to Starbucks to actually drink coffee. They go for like the individual custom drinks, whatever that must take them like forever to make. But I think that they just they poached the Chipotle CEO, and I think they needed someone with QSR experience. I don't know how the hell the decision of the person who was before them, who you look at his background and he was like Pepsi, like a PepsiCo person, but it wasn't like, had no experience in like a quick service industry, like the restaurant service industry. And so this guy from Chipotle, I think there's a lot, that's why the stock went up. I think that there's a lot of hope that he can turn around the company. But I don't know if it's too late. There's a lot of things that have changed, right? Generation wise, for example, iced coffees are now what millennials and Gen Z kind of have shifted to. So I think 75% of their revenue now comes from cold drinks, which is really insane to think about. But that's like a huge generational like change right there. And so I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna be able to come back on top in the way that they can. There's a lot more competition too, like Dutch Bros, like Dunkin' Donuts too, when it comes to like price. Like if they go to do like lower price, like they're gonna lose out on that. Looking's allegedly coming into the US offering $2 coffees too. And so like I feel like they have to stay in the premium side. And to stay in the premium side, they also have to like make sure that the brand is representing that premium. So I don't know, like TBD.
Yeah, no, I want to have you back and talk about, Brian Nickel, the current CEO, has that Chipotle background, which you mentioned. And really, I can't imagine what's on his vision board for the next 18 months for Starbucks to pivot away from, you know, it being a place of basically Uber Eats delivery folks hanging out and getting to go orders to like actually making it feel like a Starbucks. And of course, leaning into the cold drinks, maybe dovetailing with what you just said really well about the dirty soda and like the soda movement for Gen Z and millennials. Maybe there's a play there somehow. I mean, the menu feels dusty. It feels dated.
Yeah.
The bites are popular, but there's very few viral products coming out of
They
Starbucks.
they brought back the killer lemonade. They like
Oh yes, the
Panera stopped
killer
doing it,
lemonade.
and then they brought the caffeinated lemonades, and I'm like, "Whoa, welcome back, killer lemonade."
They need viral products. They need to look around the space and see what McDonald's has done. They need to look at what Sweetgreen has done, and they're clearly going to have their potential silver bullets to break through the noise with new products. But to your point, everything's getting more expensive. So adding some perception of value to that menu with their offerings both on the beverage side and the food side is going to be critical, I believe. Andrea, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
Yes.
The best fruit.
Mango,
The worst vegetable.
artichokes.
Oh wow, tell me about that. What's
They're
happening?
so complicated. Like, it's first of all, I don't know, it's like a little it looks like a little cactus. Like, I don't know, it feels like I mean, when you try to eat it, I mean, I even try to cook it. I'm like, it's overly complicated. But
Yeah.
if it's
Oh,
cooked for me, sure. But I
fully agree. The fresh artichoke, the fleeting season in the spring, definitely a tough one. The best dessert.
ooh, my favorite is this dark, like chocolate bar, like with mezcal from this brand called Cuna de Piedra. So anything dark chocolate.
Ooh, sounds amazing. I love that combination. And when it's a premium
Mhm.
cocoa and cacao, ooh, love that. Your favorite city outside America to visit for food?
Mexico City, hands down. And I'm saying this with a lot of love because I don't know, maybe I'm too Latin American, but I need food to be like very like seasoned very well. And obviously Mexicans know so much about that.
Love that call. You moved to Austin. How's the food there these days?
Yeah. Honestly, it's so funny because the Michelin people just finally gave stars here in Texas, and there's obviously a lot of Austin restaurants. I love Suerte and I love Este, anything that's like actual like Mexican American. I just tried this place called Con Vista al Mar that was spectacular. But the other stuff, like, I'm not really fond of, eating pizza or pasta in Austin. Sorry, no hate, just being realistic.
I get it. All right. A grocery item you wish you could bring back from the dead.
Oh my god. It would be a tie in between the original Funfetti Dunkaroo before they killed the kangaroo
Yes.
or the original 90s Rice Krispies treats cereal, the one that came like in a green, like a really I don't know, like I love the aesthetic of this like green cereal box, but it would be a tie in between those two.
That
RIP.
cereal, I gotta believe there's some dead stock on eBay right now for that
Yeah, but it's
cereal.
like it probably is gonna like not. It's probably like expired or something because it's been like almost 3 decades. Oh my god, I'm so old.
Oh my gosh. I think somebody please write in if you've tried this cereal, either dead stock or you have a memory. I love that. I love that one. Okay, this is big. Your favorite new grocery product or
Oh
item?
my god, you're putting me on a spot. There's so many, but I would have to say the best product I've tried like so far this year, the new brand that has just recently launched. It's a brand called Bessie, and it's labneh, and their red pepper one. I actually had it at one of the events we threw over the summer in New York, and it's just hands down like something that I just was like, whoa! I had never tried labneh like as like mixed with something. I would just traditionally just eat it like by itself or like with some olive oil, and that was really cool. Like, and it comes like in this like little dip like carton. I don't know. It's really great. The branding was really good, and so I'm sorry, please, everybody else, you all have amazing products, but Bessie,
I love it. No, I'm
take
gonna
it.
seek this out. I've seen it online, but I've never tried it, so I'm gonna seek it out. I imagine Pop Up Grocer might have it, so I'm gonna check that out. I want to hear your favorite, the new founder you met, not necessarily because of the product, but the human, the person. I know you do an amazing job on Snaxshot of profiling founders, and really props to you for doing an amazing job with the photography and the photo program. You really think about this as well. But is there a founder on the human level that you really like?
Oh my god, this is another hard question. But I would say, like, a lot of the ones that I like have become really good friends. One person that I just, like, really love because I feel like what they're doing is very intentional, and the way that they approach to, like, it's just so it's real. It's real, and I have actually wanted to profile him, but he's like, "Oh, I don't try not to have my face out there, like, it's just all about the brand." His name is Miles, and he's the guy behind Zabs. And if you've ever had Zabs, it actually Zabs exists. He's their dog. The actual little mascot is an actual real Zabs. I've met him. Zabs is amazing. But Miles is just like such a humble. They're doing amazing. Like they have all these, and they're obviously also doing a lot more on the next coming year. But I feel like it's such an underrated, like, cultish hot sauce brand. And he's just like very like just humble always, and just like such a sweet guy. And I don't know. I feel like he's one of my favorite people in CPT. I mean, yeah,
I
but
love
I
it.
have so many others. But yeah, that's
I
like,
love it. Miles listens to the show, and I got to meet him, so I feel
oh my god.
this is a very cool mention, and unprompted. I didn't know you were going to say that, but it's a great product. Zabs has got a couple lines of hot sauce, and it's a terrific product. So thanks for mentioning that. Last one, your favorite sandwich.
Ooh, that's hmm. I wasn't really like very much of a sandwich person, but I really like just like a good breakfast sandwich with like an egg, like a very yolky egg. Like, that's the only occasion I probably, like, find myself eating a sandwich.
Perfect answer. What a terrific conversation we just had, Andrea Hernandez. Thank you so much for joining This Is
Thank
Taste.
you. This was fun.
What's up, Eliza? We're back with Three Things. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Matt. How are you?
I'm good. We were talking a little bit off mic. You've been binging a little Netflix, I think.
Yeah, okay. My first thing is that I've been watching Culinary Class Wars, which I know you've watched all of. I'm not quite done
Yeah.
yet, but what a TV show. Culinary Class Wars, which, if you haven't heard about this before, is a Korean competition show where there are 20 white shirt, like Michelin star, top of their game chefs that are competing against a much larger pool of black shirt, like up and coming chefs who maybe have their own restaurant, but they don't have national, international acclaim. That is the basic premise for this show. But the way that it turns out in practice is just these really beautiful and wild expressions of contemporary cooking culture.
Yeah, what a show. I mean, 100 chefs, sequestered in a warehouse in Korea. I had Ed Lee, who participates in the show, and he told me a little bit behind the scenes. So we'll get to that in January. But what do you think about the show?
I grew up watching Iron Chef, like the Japanese one and then the Food Network one in the US later on. And so I kind of think of that as the baseline of a competitive cooking competition show, whereas Great British Bake Off is, it's competitive, but they're more chill about it. But this is easily the most insane level of competition I've ever seen in a food cooking show. I don't want to give away spoilers, but okay, you tell me if I'm saying too much. But the first episode, they eliminate 60 people, or over multiple episodes. They eliminate like so many people right off the jump. And that's when I realized, oh, this is like not a normal TV show. And there have been so many moments over the show, whether it's the ingredients that they're using or just how many people they're having move on to the next round, that the more reasonable thing to do, which would be like to just lose 2 people or to not use like really only live fish. Like, they never take that route. They always go the most extreme route, and the level of competition is just so high, and the respect that all the contestants have for each other is so high. The only thing I think that would make it better would be if I knew more about Korean fine dining and Korean restaurants, because I don't know really who most of the contestants are, but the respect that they have for each other and the way that they think about each other still carries through.
I love that's your takeaway, and I love that it shows modern Korean cooking in its true forms, which is not traditional cooking, and there's a lot of Western influence in Korea these days, and more by the day. I mean, the pack noodles guy, the guy who has the place in America. I was doing some research for another story I'm writing, and his chains in America are like blowing up because of the show.
I mean, I have so much respect for both of the judges that they brought on and all of the competitors. I think that the casting was, as someone who doesn't know most of these people, I thought they did a really good job. And I think it would be so cool if they would do a US version one day, because I would love if I knew the dynamics more of the chefs that had worked together or that were competitors with each other. And as an outsider and someone who's never been to Korea, it's really interesting to see the way that like mala cream sauce or like or dangpo pork is like huge themes on the show, and they're not necessarily like dishes or ingredients that I would have thought of ahead of time.
The Szechuan influence in modern Korean cooking is real, and the malatongs that you find at places like Flavortown, is really it's cool to see a lot of the perception of Korean food and like the modern fine dining we have in America is like smashed by the show. And like it really is Korean cooking, like the way that these ingredients are being used and the ingenuity. And it shows like a culture that is really in great flux with their culinary identity. And the show, I mean, it's really entertaining too, obviously.
Yeah, it's so cool. What's your first thing?
My first thing is I've been on my fiction train, and I'm gonna continue. And I've been talking about books I've completed, and I feel like I've maybe spoiled a couple of them. I'm sorry, listeners, but I'm like 3/4 of the way through, and I don't know the ending, but I just want to talk about it. And it's Vincent Cunningham's Great Expectations. Now, Vincent is a critic at the New Yorker. He writes about theater, art, and television. He was a finalist for the Pulitzer this year. So like he has deep chops in criticism and reporting, and this is his debut novel. And this book is about bearing witness to the rise of a presidential candidate who is a senator from Illinois who goes unnamed, but you can guess from the context clues of who this is. And Vincent, of course, worked in the Obama campaign and in the administration, so use the context clues to think about it. But really, it's not really about a behind the scenes, like what did he say, what didn't he say. There's much more to this novel, and I think it landed on New York Times top 100 or top 50 of the year, and really, what a strong debut. I mean, the story is about how a young man who has just had a child comes to terms with this big life change, but also the zoom out moments about politics and politicians, but also about religion and clergy members. He goes deep into both of these communities and these subcultures, while the narrator Dave, gets a lot of life lessons along the way. And I feel like this book has many layers to it, and it's a really, really fascinating look at how money is raised in the political game, but also about how a young man comes to terms with, his life and really his religion. And I am so impressed that someone can debut like this. It's such a strong book.
Yeah, it's been on my list for a while. Also, I really have to say I respect anyone who's doing a title like that that's basically impossible to Google.
Such an amazing title, impossible to Google, but like clearly, like I love that he went there.
Yeah, it's on my list, so I'll have to try to get it sooner.
What's your next thing?
My next thing is I just went to B&H Dairy, which I hadn't been to in a while, and I just love this restaurant.
Right.
It's such an iconic, old school, tiny New York restaurant, and I was going to see Wicked at the Angelica in East Village, which is incredible. Obviously, everyone loves it. And then I went to B&H afterwards. And what I realized after eating there is that the path that I took from seeing a show at the Angelica Village East and then going to get borscht and pierogies at B&H afterwards is the exact path that somebody could have done almost 100 years ago. because the Angelica Village East was built in the 1920s as a Jewish theater. They still have the Star of David mosaic on the ceiling. And B&H was built in that neighborhood because it was the Jewish theater district in New York, and they thought they had a built-in audience for Ashkenazi Jewish deli food. Yeah. And I love that, like, I could go to Wicked and see a movie in this former theater and then go to B&H and get, you know, maybe the same recipe of borscht, and that 100 years ago, somebody could have done something like that. That's one of the reasons why I love living in New York.
It's such an iconic restaurant, and, you know, I'm not sure who you dine with, but when after a movie you're walking to have a meal, you're probably, there's a little goss happening on the walk over, and I'm thinking 100 years ago, what's the goss like? What's the goss like for these folks who had just seen a play at the theater?
I don't know. I feel like everyone was probably buzzing with excitement the same way that we were afterwards. And the other thing I love about B&H is that it's the only deli I've been to where I can order entirely in Spanish, because everybody who works there is like from Latin America, speaks Spanish. And then it's like the most purest expression of like my grandparents' deli food. I was talking with New York Nico on the show about one of the great things about New York is not only the melting pot of different cultures on the same block, but the way that different cultures champion each other's food. And to me, that's just like the ultimate New York experience.
The tuna melt, do you order it there?
The whitefish melt.
The whitefish melt
that they do.
Right.
Yeah, I do like it there. I just wanted like boiled. They do the sauerkraut, mushroom, pierogi, and borscht. But then I was sitting at the counter watching them make whitefish melts for other people, and I verbally kept on saying, "Oh, I should have gotten that too," because it just looked so good there. So that's my second thing.
You share that love with former co-host Anna Heasel. That's one of her favorite spots. So.
I mean, I feel like anyone who goes there hopefully would love it. It's quite small, and you got to be on good behavior, but they're all so nice, and the food is so good.
It's nice, and like it moves. If you have to wait a little while, it moves quickly. So it's worth it.
Honestly, I tried to go to Veselka first because it's a little bit easier to sit there with a group. But the line at Veselka was so long.
The lines have been long there recently.
B&H, no line, and it's a place that I want to support and have it be around.
For sure, I love both those places.
What's your next thing?
My next thing is another New York City restaurant. I was there last night, and you know what? The Odeon is fucking good, man.
You got a martini?
I don't drink alcohol, but that's cool. I mean, I had a gray bottle of water. I can't remember it was like an upstate water. It was not one of the usual Italian brands. You know what? That restaurant used to be such the pits, and it was just always just there, and the food quality was low, and like it's crazy for a Keith McNally restaurant to have low food quality. So many great restaurants, and really, I would say for the most part, outside of Balthazar, the restaurants are great. And I hadn't been in years, and I would go with friends, and like we definitely order like for breakfast we'd have like French omelet or some pancakes, some coffee, or a sandwich at lunch. But like listen, for dinner I hadn't been there in probably 15 years. It was really good, and the crowd was extremely young, which is very interesting.
I have a lot of friends that go to the Odeon for like a late night Manhattan dinner. Maybe they're going out afterwards, or maybe it's the only time you can get a table there. But I think that a lot of people, especially around the holidays, are just interested in like the old New York kind of dining. Yeah,
it's a really cool space. And if you don't know, it's been around since like the late 70s, and SNL cast members famously would go there the first couple seasons. It was like their local after the shows, the rap parties were there.
And then after Condé moved downtown, it became like the Condé Nast editor lunch spot.
Definitely, it was, and that remains today. It's like so close to the tower, and really, it's. I had steak au poivre, and I was like so happy with the way they cooked it, because it was medium rare, perfect, really nice cut, great, like perfectly tossed seasoned salad, fries, the highlight. Absolute perfect fries. It's exactly the kind of bistro meal I wanted, and it was a cold night. And the service was great, and it was a great room, and very young, and I really want to keep going back, and I know this isn't like breaking news. I've heard the Odeon has been back, and there's like a new energy there, but I highly recommend it. And you know what? I grabbed an open table reservation like the day of. It wasn't like booked out, so it's like probably has some availability.
Hot tip.
What's your last one?
My last one is a energy bar, which I would never normally say. I really struggle with bars as a category. I feel like it's something that I want to like, because running around, you get too hungry. It's good to have something. But I often just kind of struggle with the texture. But my girlfriend Shirley was on a shoot, and she always comes back from like craft services table with extra snacks. And she was just raving about these mezcla energy bars. Have you had them before?
Mezcla. It sounds. I think someone sent me one. I'm sorry, I don't have any memory beyond that. Tell me about it.
They're really good. So I had to track them down. Of course, she was specifically talking about their matcha flavor, matcha vanilla.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a pea protein based energy bar.
Yes.
So it has kind of puffed split peas as the base of it. So it's very kind of crunchy and the texture is pleasing. And I think specifically the matcha flavor I was really into because I find that like protein bars can be kind of dry, or just have like a weird flavor, but that kind of like grassy, herbaceous matcha flavor like really went really well with it. And I don't think it has enough caffeine to make any sort of impact, but I had one for breakfast actually this morning when I was running into the studio, and I'm happy to find an energy bar that I like.
Mezcla. Yeah, it sounds like I gotta pick it up. Did you check the macros at all? Do you recall? Is there actually a decent amount of protein in there?
I'm looking at it right now. What would you consider to be a decent amount?
I don't.
Protein?
I asked you this question, then like in my head, I'm like, I don't know what
it has 10 grams of protein.
That seems good.
Which I think seems like a good amount of protein.
I'll take that.
Maybe we should like call on a nutrition expert.
Yeah, I feel like we're working on a great protein story for the beginning of the year, so that's going to come out. We're going to maybe tap into macros because protein. It's a big topic right now.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because the pea protein is the main source, right? The split pea, but they also have pumpkin seeds and sunflower seed butter and other things going on in there as well. The other protein bars that I like are the perfect bars that are like basically all nut butter with something else found in, but those have to be kept refrigerated. They're a little bit more finicky.
Finicky. I still hit Go Macro once in a while.
What's your last thing?
My last thing is also in the bar category.
Wow.
You're synced up today, Eliza. Okay. Tony's, right? Tony's, the chocolate bars.
Chocolonis, yeah.
Yeah, Tony's Chocolonis, the Tony's Chocolonis. Well, they have a seasonal that, well, I'm going to back up and say I'm not a big Tony's fan. Like, I've never really, like, Tamara loves Tony's and gets them often. Not often, but she gets them, like, when we want to have chocolate. And I'm just not a fan. It's not my favorite chocolate. It's not really premium chocolate. If I'm going to do chocolate, I like to get a little more, into it. They have a gingerbread flavor right now. And I've had ginger and chocolate, and it never really vibed with me. It never really worked. This is like the greatest chocolate bar of my life. I'm not being hyperbolic. I love it. They have little pieces of gingerbread in there. And for whatever reason, it's working incredibly well with the milk chocolate. It's a milk chocolate gingerbread bar. And we found it. I mean, I think they're selling them at like Costco. I don't know where I think, and they definitely sell them at Starbucks. I know I've seen them at the counter there, but it's a seasonal, and I don't know. I love gingerbread and chocolate, and I love this bar, and I'm gonna definitely buy more of them.
I'm looking at it right now, and it looks very appetizing. The Tony's bars, the thickness of them. This is maybe a niche reference, but they remind me of.
Chunk?
This is too embarrassing.
Chunk?
No, they remind me of. In Harry Potter, when the Dementors come onto the train and you have to eat chocolate to get them to go away, and specifically in the books, they're like talking about how Professor Lupin snaps open this really thick chocolate bar that makes the Dementors go away, and the thickness of that bar is what Tony's Chocolonely reminds me of. I'm excited to hear that there's other flavors to try.
Yeah, I'm thinking like the chunk bars. You remember the chunk bars? They had raisins in them.
No,
truly awful, but too thick. Maybe that's why I don't like Tony's so much. It's a very thick bar.
It is a thick bar, but it's meant to be kind of snapped into pieces.
I know.
I think it depends on what kind of chocolate vibe you're feeling
totally.
for the day.
But yeah, Tony's milk chocolate gingerbread, totally right for the season. Eliza, thank you for sharing your 3 things.
You too.
This is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.